Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror franchise review video as I take a look at the Psycho franchise for the month of June here. Um, so, of course, when we're taking a look at Psycho, you got to start at the very beginning. So, we're going to go ahead and review the classic 1960 Alfred Hitchcock, The Psycho, with Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh that I have here on Blu-ray and digital code. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. Psycho from 1960, one of the great movies of all time, in my opinion. Not only one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but one of my favorite movies, period, of all time. And we'll get into the reasons here as I get into my pros and a couple little cons. But Psycho is a 1960 American psychological horror thriller film produced and directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The screenplay, written by Joseph Stefano, was based on a 1959 novel by the same name by Robert Bloch. The plot centers on an encounter between an on-the-run embezzler and a shy motel proprietor and its aftermath, in which private investigator Marion's lover Sam Loomis and her sister investigate her disappearance. So that's basically the gist of the movie. During a Friday afternoon tryst in a Phoenix hotel, real estate secretary Marion Crane and her boyfriend Sam Loomis discuss their inability to get married because of Sam's debts. Marion returns to work, steals a cash payment of $40,000 entrusted to her for deposit, and sets off to drive to Sam's home in Fairville, California. Marion hurriedly trades her car en route, arousing suspicion from both the car dealer and a California Highway Patrol officer. Marion stops for the night at the Bates Motel, located off the main highway, and hides the stolen money inside a newspaper. Proprietor Norman Bates descends from a large house overlooking the motel, registers Marion under an assumed name, and invites her to dine with him. After Norman returns to his house, Marion overhears Norman arguing with his mother about Marion's disappearance. Norman returns with a light meal and apologizes for his mother's outbursts. Norman discusses his hobby as a taxidermist, his mother's illness, and how people have a private trap that they want to escape. Marion decides to drive back to Phoenix in the morning and return the stolen money. As Marion showers, a shadowy figure in a dress appears and stabs her to death. Soon afterward, Norman cleans up the murder scene, putting Marion's body's belongings and the hidden cash in her car and sinks it in a swamp. So yeah, that's the setup and the beginning of Psycho, the first half of the movie, basically. What can you say about this movie? It's like I said, it's one of the greatest movies ever. Cast wise, you have Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates, Vera Miles as Lila Crane, Janet Leigh as Marion Crane, John Gavin as Sam Loomis, Martin Balsam as private investigator Arbogast, and John McIntyre as Deputy Sheriff Al Chambers. Yeah, I'm going to go on about a 5 minute tirade praising this movie here before I get into just a couple nitpicky cons. Um, but just a little diatribe first. This is one of the first horror movies that I remember seeing, probably in the mid '80s. I think it was on television, as part of an Alfred Hitchcock week on a local network where I lived. Um, and I still remember this was the Tuesday night movie that was put on that week. Why I remember that, I don't know. Part of it's because I have an elephant like a memory. Scratch that, reverse it. I have a memory like an elephant. And part of it's just this movie stuck out so much to me of all the movies they played this week. And Hitchcock's got he's got about 10 fantastic movies, if not more. But this one always stands out for obvious reasons. It's the most horror movie that he did. It's the most iconic, quotable, rewatchable, in my opinion. Um, yeah, so it's got a special place in my heart, and it always will. Not just as a horror movie, but movie period. It's one of my top 10 for sure. So let's start with the pros, and there are a lot of them. The performance of Anthony Perkins has to be mentioned first and foremost. It's not just a great performance; it's a legendary performance. Even underrated, in my opinion, to this day. The amount of weight and brilliance that he brings to that character of Norman Bates, it makes the overall movie that much better because of his performance, his believability, everything from his mannerisms to how he handles the crew when he's like some of his creepier moments to some of his more lighthearted, nice and charming kind of moments. He just plays the character brilliantly. It's one of the best on-screen performances of all time, and I'm not going to apologize for that statement. It's absolutely true. The other performances in the movie are all really solid as well, most notably Janet Leigh and Vera Miles, the two sisters who they both kind of have their half of the movie. I like Janet Leigh's half a little bit better, but certainly the Vera Miles half after the shower. There's basically before the shower scene, after the shower scene, and they both carry the movie along with Anthony Perkins, of course, very well. But they're both really good. Martin Balsam is good. The entire cast just really brings and breathes life into this movie. And a lot of that has to do with how well the characters are written as well. But the performances are really top notch. But yeah, Janet Leigh and Vera Miles, you really grab onto their characters and sympathize with them at different points throughout this movie. They do a great job of taking these characters taking the audience on this journey through their characters. So obviously, it's one of the best written and best directed movies of all time. It's so stylized, it's so effective with the introduction of the story and the characters and how they throw the audience off halfway through this movie by saying it's about her. No, actually, it isn't. It's about him. It's never been done as well to this day. I'm sure other movies have tried to do it. In fact, I know they have. But to me, this is nothing will ever match this level of stylized filmmaking and storytelling. Um, and just the way the story unfolds, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. The shots and the camera work throughout the movie are legendary. So well done, especially the overhead shots that they use, like within the house. It's just so well shot, beautiful looking movie, even for 1960. It works so well and really helps with the storytelling as well as the scares in this movie in certain scenes. Um, the editing and the storyboarding is second to none. From the titles at the very beginning of this movie to the shower scene, of course, which the shower scene has its own movie basically that's been made. All the documentaries just talking about the shower scene. It's one of the most iconic top three scenes talked about scenes in movie history. It really is, and one of the very best horror movie one of the very best movie period scores of all time by Bernard Herrmann. Iconic themes used add so much to the creepiness of the movie. Even if you're somebody that hasn't seen this entire movie, you know the score. Sorry, I don't really give it justice with how I do it, but everybody knows that score. It's iconic to the point that it goes beyond the movie. Having seen the movie, um, also, you got to talk about the setting of this movie. It just works so brilliantly. It's very isolating, away from a lot of civilization, makes it all that much creepier. And the house and what the house represents as it relates to the story, overlooking this motel. It's just so brilliant. And then obviously this movie has iconic lines, iconic quotes, and it's one of the most rewatchable horror movies and movies period that I've ever seen, to be honest with you. So yeah, except for all those pros, the movie's terrible. So yeah, if you can't tell, I'm a huge fan of this movie. I just think it's a masterpiece, and I don't throw that term around lightly. um, but from the directing to the performances to the writing to the camera work to the editing to the score and the music, which it's funny, like I get to the score and the music like fifth or sixth in my line of pros. But I mean, it's if it's not the most iconic movie scored movie, it's top three. And anybody that says otherwise, I just gonna have a big problem with them. So again, to each their own. But I just think that the score is one of the best things about this movie, and I get to it at like fourth or fifth on my list. So that pretty much tells you everything you need to know. Even with all these pros that I've given, I still feel like I'm forgetting something or I'm leaving something on the table. That's how you know you've got an iconic legendary movie. Talking a little bit about some of the cons with this movie, and again, some of them they're very nitpicky. Some of them are more related to the time that the movie was made. I don't think the second half of the movie is quite as strong as the first half. Like, I kind of view this movie like the first half being everything up until the shower scene, and then the second half of the movie everything after the shower scene. Now, that being said, I don't think the second half of the movie drags down the movie to the point where it's a huge con. Yeah, I just don't think it's quite as high as the first half of the movie. That's not to say that it isn't still really good. Um, But yeah, there is a little bit of a drop, even if it's a slight one. I just don't think the characters in the second half are quite as engaging as what we get in the first half, and a lot of that's a credit to Janet Leigh's character and her performance as Marion. Um, Another small con I have, and again, I think this goes more to when the movie was made and audiences at this time. Other people have brought this con up, really as the only con to this movie for a lot of people, and that's the psychiatrist speech or the speech by the doctor at the end of the movie. Um, aka the exposition dump that we end up getting. And if you've watched my channel, you know I'm not a huge fan of exposition dumps that are given by certain characters throughout the course of the movie. Now, it helps the fact that this is at the very end of the movie, basically. There's only one or two more scenes that are in this movie after this. So I don't think it kills the movie by any means. I just don't think it's necessary. But again, from what I've read and what I've researched, I feel like the psychiatrist speech in 1960 was more important than it would be in 2022 if this movie was made the same today. I definitely don't think that they would have to give as much exposition as they do in this movie. But I just think at this time, audiences, because this was such a shocking movie with the twist that we get, there needed to be more exposition for audiences at this time. Otherwise, I think a lot of people would have walked out scratching their heads and been confused. Obviously, with where we've come in the last 60 plus years, I think audiences are more trusted than they were 60 plus years ago. Um, I don't think they need to be spoon fed as much. I certainly don't like to be spoon fed things. I mean, you do have to give some clues and some expositions for movies to make any sense. I'm not saying that it should be totally ambiguous, but they really lay it out in all terms, and they cover everything from what happened to the who got the money to everything at the end of this movie. And it's just again, it's not necessary, but I think it's more related to the time. I just feel like you need to have more faith in your audience as a filmmaker. But again, I'm not going to hold that hugely against the movie. I think other people hold it against the movie a little bit more. I'm not going to be one of those people. I kind of get it, but I can also acknowledge the fact that it is a huge exposition dump that I just don't think if you watch this movie, it is my least favorite part of the movie. That being said, this movie's just so well shot and so well directed and so stylized with atmosphere and while it's not one of the scariest horror movies of all time, especially when you watch it in 2022, I do think there's some genuinely scary scenes and scary images, namely the shower scene. But to me, the scariest scene's actually towards the end of this movie. It kind of bookends around the psychiatrist speech, if you will, the big twist reveal, and just that whole image and the music and everything. And then at the very end, again, I don't want to give spoilers, even though this movie's been out there for 60 plus years, and I feel like everybody should have seen it by now. I'm sure there's people out there that haven't. So I'm not going to give it away, but like right before the ending credits, there's a scene that I think is having to do with Norman Bates that's very iconic and very creepy as well. So there's definitely horror elements. It's no mistake this movie is a horror movie. Probably just not a horror movie that you'd compare to something like something from 2018 or something. It's a different kind of horror, but a more effective kind, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's all I've got for cons. Like I said, mostly nitpicky, mostly related to the time the movie was made. But make no mistake, this movie's brilliant. And I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. And I don't throw those ratings around lightly if you've watched my channel and my reviews. But this is damn near a flawless movie. Could I make an argument to give it a 9.5 out of 10? Yeah, but I'm splitting hairs. This is a movie I'll take to my grave. It's a 10 out of 10 movie as far as I'm concerned. It's right up there with The Shining and John Carpenter's The Thing as far as perfect legendary movies go. So 10 out of 10 for the original Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. Go ahead and comment down below, guys. Tell me what you think of the original Psycho. Do you think it's more flawed than I do? Do you like it as much as I do? Um, yeah, comment down below. Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my videos coming up for the rest of this series. I'm excited to review this series because, as I mentioned in my intro video, this is one of my favorite horror franchises of all time. One of the most underrated, in my opinion, of all time. But we'll get into that as we go. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel as well down below so you don't miss any of my great horror content overall. Not only this series, but what I have planned for the rest of the year. So, thank you for watching this horror movie review video. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Stay scared. Bye.